Thank you for joining us for our Designing a Deep Dive into Mars workshop. I'm Laura, and I'm an educator at the National Air and Space Museum.
And I'm Christian, an educator with Curious at the National Museum of Natural History.
In this workshop, we're asking some of our explainers and Q crew at both of our museums to complete our challenge and to talk to us a little bit more about how the process went for them. We live in a designed world, and everything around us, from the clothes that we're wearing to the tools that we use, like our cell phones, are the products of design. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more today. We're going to challenge you all to design either a personal spacesuit for individual exploration and data collection on Mars, or a mobile living unit for multiple scientists to use as a home and study area on Mars' surface.
We'll look at the deep sea and how some organisms have adapted to live there to provide us with some biological inspiration for our technological designs. The deep sea is a really cool environment that we actually don't know everything about. The abiotic factors of the deep sea that I'm going to talk a little bit about are low to no light, intense pressure, and hydrothermal vents. Organisms have adapted to these abiotic factors in a variety of ways. For instance, for low to no light, creatures like the hatchetfish have evolved to have these big eyes that they use to capture as much of that little light that there's there as possible. Also, anglerfish and other creatures like that have evolved bioluminescence, which means they generate their own light. For intense pressure, creatures like the deep sea cucumber have evolved to have hydrostatic skeletons. Essentially, they handle that pressure by being really squishy. And hydrothermal vents, they're these undersea volcanoes that are belching out these harsh chemicals that if it was you or I, Laura, down there, we wouldn't last very long. But there are creatures like the giant tube worm that have evolved a process called chemosynthesis, where they use those chemicals, much like photosynthesis, to convert into food and energy.
Well, it's really interesting to hear about how all of those sea creatures have adapted to their environment. I'm going to share a little bit about some abiotic factors of Mars today. I'm specifically going to talk about the atmosphere, wind and weather, and gravity. And we've been learning a lot about these abiotic factors through different tools that have been sent to explore Mars, like rovers. So Mars' atmosphere is different from Earth. It's made up of different things, and there's a lack of oxygen. So they need designs that specially equip them to adapt to this. The wind and weather are also elements that astronauts would have to take into consideration while exploring Mars' surface. The wind on Mars is pretty strong. It's about 10 to 20 miles per hour. And those winds have actually shaped Mars and sculpted the terrains into what we've seen through images today. Gravity is another factor that you'd have to take into consideration because gravity is different on Mars than Earth. So gravity is important because it keeps us held to Earth's surface. And astronauts on Mars would need to live and work in about 3/8 of Earth's gravitational pull for up to 2 years. So NASA has designed some really cool technology to help combat or mitigate some of these factors. And today, it's your all's turn to take these factors into consideration to design for further exploration on Mars' surface.
Now that we understand the context of our challenge, let's meet the explainers and Q crew who will be talking and working through it today.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We're really excited to do this design challenge with you. So we've just talked about these different environments, these hostile environments, right? But these environments are actually a new frontier, and they require new technological designs and redesigns, which is why we're doing this design challenge. So now that you've had time to think about it, what are your immediate plans for executing this design challenge or your reactions to completing it?
Okay, so I took some notes from what Christian was mentioning about how these creatures have these different adaptations to like make things actually into a good thing rather than a challenge. And I was really intrigued by the chemosynthesis concept. And so now I'm thinking for like either a habitat or a suit, some sort of maybe that could be like manipulated or used as sort of an exhaust or air conditioning system that actually like takes in chemicals and turns it into something like just sort of how we've simulated photosynthesis with a solar panel.
Like try and take like whatever not breathable chemicals are in the Mars atmosphere and kind of like turn it into oxygen so that we have like sort of a constant supply of oxygen so that the astronauts can like be out longer.
One of the things that I thought was most interesting was thinking about the adaptations that fish have, and fish or deep sea creatures are very differently shaped than humans. I'm planning on making a spacesuit, and human spacesuits tend to be shaped or look kind of similar to clothing. So how can we take those adaptations and maybe make it look a little more untraditional in a way that would work better?
Yeah. And actually, I feel like we could even combine those ideas and like have some of those shapes be more efficient for the pressure situation. And some of those shapes that are added on could be those additional functions of filtering the air. Because I'm imagining like a wispy thing like a fish fin would be a good like air filter kind of thing.
I sort of thought about just like my favorite objects in the Natural History Museum, and there's this sort of cool baleen we have, which whales have, and then they can sort of like filter out the water and sort of keep everything that they need. So I was thinking if there's some sort of technology we could use that would filter out the sort of bad things and keep all the like oxygen-rich things we need, that would be helpful.
I think this whole concept of adaptability is really going to play a big role in our designs, because like we really don't know exactly. We can't plan out our trip exactly how it's going to go. So we have to be ready for encountering any obstacles, such as like ability to find resources that might be much more difficult than we're anticipating. So I think this whole concept of just being flexible and designing kind of like multifaceted machines in order to accomplish our goals.
In Mars, I know dust storms are very common occurrences because the Martian soil is so loose that the wind just picks it up. So like visibility of just like a person out exploring is also a really big thing, where you need to make sure that they can see like where they're going.
So I wonder if there are any movement adaptations that fish have that can kind of be suited to astronauts. Like I know sea floor creatures move using cilia and other appendages that help them move along the ground. So I wonder if that can kind of be translated into like ways of walking that would be more efficient in a lower gravity environment.
Yeah, I sort of think like balancing this, like this is an environment we're trying to study, but we also have to be able to live there. So one of the things Robin said, the cilia sort of reminded me of like flagella, which I think like bacteria have. I've not done bio in a while though. So like maybe the idea of just like having some sort of extension that can sort of push something behind you, so you're not really disrupting the surface, but you are changing a little bit to like move forward through it.
Can you tell us a bit about what materials you're all planning to use to make your prototypes?
I'm planning on drawing mine.
I have a box of random assorted junk I found around my house that I'm actually pretty excited about. I've got various tapes. I've got some Q-tips. Got some saran wrap and foil.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna draw mine too. Maybe if I sort of get ambitious, I'll do like little swatches of like, okay, this is maybe what this texture would be, but we'll see.
I have some tinfoil over here. I think like having malleable materials is really important to kind of just like transform it into what you want.
I'm going to be designing it on a computer using CAD software, which is computer assisted design. Basically, you would build it like you would normally. You'd take like a flat thing, like here's my design in 2D, and now I'm going to make it 3D is basically what it does.
Are there any difficulties that you all are anticipating having as you're going through this process?
The main thing that I keep on thinking about is all of these random materials, like takeout boxes and like tape and yarn. They're not really meant to be incorporated into one design. They're meant for their very specific purpose of like food or like other things like that. So I'm a bit worried about how I'm going to connect all of these. I think what I'm going to have to end up doing is really like poking holes in it with like toothpicks and things like that, because I'm not sure if tape can really stick to all of these like metallic and plasticky materials.
It's time for you to finally start designing. Go ahead and take 30 minutes to build your design on your own, and then after that time period, we'll come back together as a group to share out. right, welcome back. At this point, everyone has gotten to spend some time with their design and thinking through how to meet this challenge. So everyone is going to share their design and have time to talk through everyone else's.
What I came up with so far is this. I made these out of cork so that they don't have, like tire pressure that could pop from this needing to be, sturdy for the less gravity than Earth. I did install one solar panel on the roof. And then this is the cab, which still needs a windshield. And then this is the start of my biodome, which is going to have that kind of triangular structure up to the top.
So here's my design. I don't know if you can see it. So the helmet of the design is clear all the way around, and it mimics the barrel eye fish, which has a huge dome-shaped head, and it helps provide visibility in low light. And then here, the green lines on the suit are bioluminescent for communication and visibility. This part is based off of the black swallower fish, which is a pouch that helps store food in the fish, and in the scientist, it would expand to store scientific samples. And the boots have traction on the bottom. That's not based off a sea creature, but that was based off of the ideas that you all gave when we were talking.
Awesome. Who's next?
So I think it's me. So it's basically kind of cone-shaped. I was kind of thinking of like the front of a fish face, kind of just like that aerodynamic kind of shape so that it's easier to move. But with that comes like, it's easier for the wind to move it. So I added these like kind of extendable legs that kind of would like dig down into the ground so that like if there is a huge windstorm, it can like stabilize the entire unit so it's not rolling all over the place. I was going to add like that chemosynthesis, I think it was, like a whole unit in the back there, just so we can convert nitrogen and methane in the Mars atmosphere into oxygen for the astronauts to be able to breathe.
So for mine, I really was inspired by my vacuum cleaner. And I'll like show parts of it. I really was just like, what the strategy is to just like add a bunch of different things for each environment. So we have these removable arms. We have like a sort of baleen type thing, and then like a grabby arm. And I was thinking just like really just have as many arms as you really could possibly have. I stole my sister's weaving, and I was thinking like maybe you could have like a little rug on the bottom, but I would sort of have it be black to maybe maximize sort of like the heat that's being trapped. And then I had some lights along the side, and I was thinking maybe you could communicate with other people, like one person would get a pod and you could communicate with other sort of pods with these different colored lights.
So here is my design right here. It kind of just looks like a takeout box with like pipe cleaners on it. And it kind of is. Basically, here we have at the bottom, these originally were supposed to be like legs that could were very stable, but the more I kind of looked at it, it reminded me a bit of, I think it's mycelia of from bacteria that can kind of just use their legs like spaghetti and move around. So I think that's kind of what it turned into. And then on the front here, I have this little piece of tinfoil. It's supposed to act as kind of almost like a sonar technology thing. And then on the inside of it, we have these, I don't think you can really see it very well, but it's a bit of clay. It's supposed to be kind of like plant life because obviously you're going to need oxygen.
I think something I would have done differently is maybe taken some time to add some more 3D elements, like some textures and using different types of materials and things like that. I really have learned so much seeing everyone else's designs and also being able to brainstorm with you guys. So I definitely would love to incorporate some of your ideas into my design.
For me, I think I would take more energy considerations into mine, the solar panels or chemosynthesis. I think that would be really helpful. And then I also think just going forward, I just loved everybody else's designs and would just steal things from them. I really like Annie and Charlie. I like that they had plants in theirs and sort of adding this extra element of sustainability. I like that Robin's was so mobile and the expanding stomach thing is just sounds so cool. And then Isha's sort of aerodynamic focus I also think is really smart. So I would just take all those and add them to mine.
I think it's so fascinating how, especially with Robin's, how practically everything was inspired by nature and organisms in some way. And for mine, it was almost accidental how mine were. So I think going forward, I would try to look for more inspiration in nature to try to incorporate that into my design.
Definitely. I think one super big takeaway is that the design process is like really fun, and you kind of have to let yourself be creative and enjoy what you're making and not worry too much about the finished product.
When you look at objects around your house, you kind of see like, oh, is it a takeout box? It's a takeout box. But I feel like there's a certain level of potential you have to keep in your head of looking at it and thinking, wow, that could be a Mars habitat, for example, or like that could be the legs of my Mars habitat. So just looking at objects and seeing much more than how society uses them and more how you can think about it in your head and transform it into something entirely new. I think it's just important to remember, don't sweat it if things don't go exactly how you intended it to do, because that means that it wasn't working out. So obviously you want to try to switch things up and try to think about things in a new way. But once you like let yourself get frustrated and think like, oh, I've gathered all these materials and now they're not working, well, you're most likely using them in ways that they're not intended for anyway. So just try to think of new ways to use them and new ways to kind of adapt to your circumstances.
Well, it was really great to see everyone's designs. We're really impressed with everything that you all did, and can't wait to hear more about your design process as you continue through it.